and welcome to the Dynamic Duel Podcast, a weekly show where we review superhero films and debate the superiority between Marvel and DC by comparing their characters in stat-based battle simulations. I'm Marvelous Joe.
And I'm his twin brother, Johnny DC.
And in this episode, we are going to be reviewing the 2003 movie Daredevil, directed and written by Mark Steven Johnson, starring Ben Affleck as the titular character. It's a tie-in to our previous episode where we found out who would win in a fight between the Suicide Squad and the Defenders. Now, Daredevil has recently been a prominent member of the Defenders, and so we and our executive producers thought it would be cool to review this film now. It's not a great movie. When it first came out, I really liked it, but it has not aged well, especially in contrast to the Netflix Daredevil TV show.
Yeah, I mean, I was a big defender of this movie back when it first came out, but now it's obviously bad, and not like in a fun kind of way, in a heartbreaking kind of way.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. We'll get into the details of the movie later on this episode. Before that, we're going to go over the comic book movie news from the past week, of which we had just one major news item, and that is the Phase 4 trailer, essentially, that Marvel put out. They gave us our first look at the Eternals, and gave us a bunch of new news regarding the upcoming Phase 4 MCU slate.
As always, we list our segment times in our episode description, so feel free to check out the show notes if you want to skip ahead to a particular topic.
And just a reminder, if you guys want to support the show, there are 3 ways you can do it. The first way is to follow this podcast on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter.
Particularly Instagram.
Right, because we're trying to get to 1,000 followers there. You could go to our website, dynamicduel.com, to find links to all of our social media accounts. The second way to support the show is to rate us or review us on your platform of choice. You could also support us on Patreon, of course, where for as low as $2 a month, you can get perks like access to our Discord chat, where you get to chat with Jonathan and I and a bunch of other fans, and get bonus content. It's a lot of fun, so check it out at patreon.com/dynamicduel. As we mentioned the past couple of episodes, Apple Podcast subscriptions has made a way for podcast creators to monetize their podcasts by putting their shows behind a paywall. Dynamic Duel won't be doing that. Our plan is to keep this show free, but that's only if we get enough patrons. Otherwise, we're just throwing money away. So our goal is to get to 100 patrons before the Black Widow movie comes out in mid-July. If we can do that, this podcast will stay free. And again, those who sign up get access to our bonus perks. So it's a win-win. Thanks to everyone who signs up for that and supports the show in other ways. We want to give a particular shout out to Kevin Odilon, who gave us a review, and new patrons Nathaniel and Quinn Smith.
You guys are the best.
But with that out of the way,
quick to the No Prize. So a No Prize is an award that Marvel used to give out up until the 90s to fans. Our version, the Dynamic Duel No Prize, is a digital award that we post on social media that I personally draw for those who we feel gave the best answer to our question of the week. Last week we asked what new DC or Marvel comic book character to come out in the past 5 years do you hope to see in a live-action project? And this tied into the CW's first look at Naomi, their upcoming television series. The character of Naomi only came out in 2019, so we were curious to see what other new characters you hoped to see in live action.
Yeah, we got a lot of great answers. We have a list of honorable mentions to get through, as well as a couple of No Prize winners. So let's get to it.
Our first honorable mention goes to CJ Kraft, who said,
"Hey guys, CJ Kraft, and I'd want to see the character Honey Badger brought into the MCU, but maybe like a cartoon or R-rated movie where you can get away with doing a lot of gore and make it like the Logan movie, but have X-23 as the mentor instead of Wolverine, just like in the comics. Thanks, and keep up the great work. Your podcast is awesome."
Thanks, CJ.
Yeah, for those who may not know, Honey Badger is a new Marvel character who is a clone of a clone, essentially. Like how X-23 is a clone of Wolverine, Honey Badger is a clone of X-23, and she only has one claw. But yeah, I could totally see that working in a sequel to the Logan movie.
I didn't even know this character existed. This is like Wolverine oversaturation at this point.
I don't know about that.
I mean, you also have Daken and Old Man Logan.
Yeah, that's true. But, Wolverine's a badass character, so the more the merrier,
I guess.
I'd like to see a Wolverine family in the same way there's like a Bat family or something like that. A Wolverine Corps, as it were. Our next honorable mention goes to Matthew Gonzalez, who said,
"Hey guys, Matthew Gonzalez here. As far as the question of the week goes, I definitely want to see Cosmic Ghost Rider, because with redoing Punisher and Nicolas Cage's Ghost Rider being a flop, great way to introduce him into Guardians of the Galaxy, maybe some other cosmic stuff. Yeah, I think that'd be pretty awesome."
I like this answer because I love the look of Cosmic Ghost Rider alone. I don't know how Cosmic Ghost Rider would work in the MCU, considering we haven't gotten solid versions of Frank Castle or Johnny Blaze in the films yet. But down the line, I would totally love to see this happen. Essentially, this character is Frank Castle gone to hell, making a deal with the devil, becoming Ghost Rider, and then Ghost Rider becoming a Herald of Galactus. It's a cool concept.
Our final honorable mention goes to AJ Dunkerley, who said,
Hi, I'm AJ. I'm a new listener. I think a character that just came out in the past 5 years that should appear in live action should be Hydra Captain America. I feel that with Contessa Valentina Allegra, whatever the hell her name is, appearing on Falcon and Winter Soldier, and the fact that Emilia Clarke just got casted, I think she's Viper. And I think they could do a huge comeback for Hydra, and I think Hydra Cap will be leading them.
new listener AJ Dunkerley coming out with the controversial choice right out the gate.
But I'm into it. I like a lot of his ideas here. I didn't even consider that Emilia Clarke could be playing Viper. I just had her set as Queen Veranki. But it also made me think that maybe she's playing Abigail Brand, the head of SWORD. And then SWORD gets infiltrated by Hydra or something like that. And if this reemergence of Hydra found a way to rewrite reality, it could definitely be a way for Chris Evans to come back into the MCU. First as an evil version that the new Captain America would have to fight, and then eventually maybe come back into the role. If that's what they wanted to do, that's how they could do it.
Oh yeah, totally, because they could also erase his past and make him young again.
Exactly.
If they're going to do that.
Right.
That's how you get Chris Evans back.
If you wanted to do that. Right now, I'm just really attached to Sam Wilson, Captain America, and I want to see that go for a long while for sure.
We want to thank Shane Habazin and Mark1684 for taking the time to leave us a voicemail. Loved your answer. But this week's no prize goes to Jose M. and Dustin Belcom, who both gave the same answer. They said,
What up, guys? This is Jose, first-time caller. And the new character I would like to see would be Sideways from DC. I think he's got an interesting background. He's Latino. He's an orphan. He was adopted by white parents. And I think just the dynamic alone would make him very interesting. He also got spun off from the Dark Multiverse metal event. And I think if they eventually work backwards from that, it would be pretty interesting to see in live action. Let me know what you guys think.
Hey, Dynamic Duel, Dustin Balcom here, and the only right answer is Sideways. If you guys haven't read that comic in DC Comics yet, you need to. It's a character that even old grumpy Marvelous Joe can like.
Grumpy, get off my lawn, Dustin Balcom.
No, I wanted to choose these guys not only because they both vouched for this new character, but also because their answers made me look into the character. I'd never read him before, and now I really want to read it.
What's Sideways about?
It's about this kid who falls into like an interdimensional portal during the Dark Knight's metal event, which was awesome, and he ends up getting these teleportation powers. You know, he could create portals as a result of that.
So he's like Nightcrawler.
He's like what happens if you mix Nightcrawler with like Miles Morales.
That's pretty cool.
And it's gotten pretty good reviews, so I'm definitely going to check it out. Thanks to Jose and Dustin for giving us this week's winning answer.
And if you, the listener, want a shot at winning your own no prize, stay tuned to later on this episode when we'll be asking another question of the week. And now that that's done,
on to the news.
All right, this past week, Marvel released a neat little video called Marvel Studios Celebrates the Movies. The first half of it was basically reminding viewers that, hey, Marvel's still around. We haven't released a movie for a while, but we have a lot coming down the pike, so get hyped now.
Yeah, it was basically an appeal to go to the movies because the box office has been down, it's still down, and I think they really just wanted to get people hyped for the movie-going experience before they start releasing their films.
Right, yeah, and this was a good way to do it. It convinced me, for sure. The second half of this video kind of teased what is to come, including the upcoming Black Widow film, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and we got our first look at the upcoming Eternals movie. It was just a few shots, but it was pretty cool looking.
Yeah, that sword made of light that Angelina Jolie was wielding, badass.
Yes, yeah. The cinematography looks awesome. Even shots with, like, Salma Hayek riding a horse. It just looks sweeping and epic.
Oh, yeah.
Shut the fuck up. All the actors just look fantastic. Kumail Nanjiani, Richard Madden, Gemma Chan, they look like godlike immortal beings for sure.
I'm definitely more interested in the story just from you, having heard what the Eternals are all about. But also, apparently Disney is really, really happy with the finished film. And even Kevin Feige was joking that this was going to win next year's Best Picture.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Chloe Zhao would win those Oscars back to back, but it would be cool if she did. And now we know that she's a really talented director. That shot of a group of them standing in front of like this tall, ancient building looks really cool. Where Makari like runs in from the side.
Right.
Yeah. The next big news to come out of this video was the title reveal for the Black Panther sequel.
Wakanda Forever, which is kind of a touching title.
Absolutely. And I think it speaks to kind of the legacy of the franchise, saying that, yeah, we lost Chadwick Boseman, but he lives in our hearts forever,
Yeah, totally.
Marvel did release a logline for this movie saying that Wakanda Forever will continue to explore the incomparable world of Wakanda and all of the rich and varied characters introduced in the first film. So instead of taking a specific look at the character of Black Panther, it's basically a movie that's going to explore the broader nation, which I'm all about because there was just such incredible world building in the first movie.
Yeah, totally.
That movie's going to come out on July 8th, 2022. And it's going to be followed by The Marvels, which is coming out later in 2022 on November 11th.
Yeah, previously this was billed as Captain Marvel 2, but now we know the official title of it.
Right. And that was actually the biggest surprise for me watching this video. I was genuinely shocked that they removed the name Captain Marvel from this franchise. And I don't know if it's because people aren't huge fans of the character or if they're really trying to play up the inclusion of characters like Ms. Marvel and Photon or Spectrum or whatever you want to call her, Monica Rambeau. Because their logos also show up within the Marvel's movie logo.
Yeah, that was a surprise. That was pretty cool.
It makes me wonder to the extent that they're all going to share screen time. And are they going to formally form a team called the Marvels? There's never been a team called the Marvels within the comics. There has been a series called The Marvels, but that was kind of an offshoot of the Marvels comic book series that goes into the history of the Marvel Universe, written by Kurt Busiek and drawn by Alex Ross. But both Monica Rambeau and Carol Danvers have been part of a team called the Ultimates in the comics that have fought off extra-dimensional and intergalactic threats. And I think that's where this might go.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And honestly, this news makes me look forward even more towards shows like Ms. Marvel, which I really wasn't too excited about before.
We also got a release date for the upcoming Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania movie that's going to come out on February 17th, 2023. And we learned that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is going to come out May 5th of that same year.
Oh, I forget. When is the Guardians of the Galaxy Christmas special supposed to come out?
Christmas the prior year in 2022.
Okay, cool.
We got another little small tease of the Fantastic Four movie logo, but no release date for that one yet. The video ends saying, "See you at the movies," again pushing people to get their asses in seats at the cinema.
And I think that's a really smart move on Marvel's behalf, They also recently moved their Disney Plus Marvel show, like the upcoming Loki, from Fridays to Wednesdays, just so it doesn't compete with the box office.
Can't wait to get back. I'm all vaccinated now.
As am I as of yesterday. My arm's fucking sore as hell.
But this look at Marvel's Phase 4 brings us to our question of the week.
Which Marvel Phase 4 film are you most looking forward to, and why?
Record your answer at dynamicduel.com by clicking on the red microphone button in the bottom right-hand corner, which will prompt you to leave us a voicemail. Your message can be up to 30 seconds long, and don't forget to leave your name in case we include you on the podcast. We'll pick our favorite answer and draw that person a Dynamic Duel No Prize that we'll post to social media. Be sure to answer before May 15th. But that does it for the news for this episode, so let's go ahead and get into our main event where we review the 2003 film Daredevil. Alright, Daredevil is a 2003 film starring Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner, produced by 20th Century Fox, and written and directed by Mark Steven Johnson. Now, I know what you're thinking, and the answer is yes. It is the very same Mark Steven Johnson who directed Simon Birch that directed this film.
What?
Johnson was a huge fan of the Daredevil comics, and I think that really showed in this film. But I also think that he was woefully underqualified to tackle a production of this magnitude. The result is a movie that's jam-packed full of small fan service moments that drive comic book readers like me wild, but unfortunately, it's not a great film as a whole. Now, spoiler warning for those who have never seen 2003's Daredevil. This review, as all of our reviews do, will be discussing plot points from the movie. And if you've never seen it,
Don't.
just watch the Daredevil Netflix show instead, because it's so much better.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. I didn't realize how much better the Netflix show was until I watched the theatrical cut of this movie again for the first time in probably close to a decade. I think I had deluded myself into thinking this Daredevil movie was recommendable for the longest time because of all the great fan service moments and cool action beats it had. But it wasn't until I watched the theatrical cut again this past week that it really hit home how disconnected and not great it truly was.
Yeah, it's from a bygone era of when superhero movies didn't even really try to be good movies. Like, they were just there to be fun.
Yeah, popcorn flicks.
And there are definitely parts of this film that are fun, especially if you're a Daredevil fan, like you mentioned. But most of it, I think, to the casual moviegoer, was just too gritty, too campy, and too many moments that are like, what the hell?
Yeah, exactly. Like, now I would classify this movie as just meh, But for the longest time, I always saw the film as fine, adequate. I remember seeing it in theaters and walking away, slightly disappointed, but mostly content. I first learned that they were making a Daredevil film around the time the first Spider-Man movie came out in 2002, and I remember being super excited. But I didn't really read or see anything else about the movie until I saw the teaser for it in front of the Minority Report film. And I was like so super stoked, particularly because of the imagery in that preview where he's like standing on the building next to the stone angels.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Mark Steven Johnson, if nothing else, created a film that really captured the gothic art style of the comics, particularly the early Marvel Knights Daredevil comics, with this film's dark color scheme and a lot of Catholic symbolism throughout, which is totally appropriate given the character's strong Catholic background.
Yeah, there were some really cool fan service moments, seeing like Daredevil like at the top of a cathedral, hugging a cross and bleeding. That was really cool.
Yeah. It's a lot of those little touches that really show that Mark Steven Johnson is a true fan of the comics, because that shot was taken from a cover of Daredevil during Joe Quesada's run.
Right. And same thing with like the last frame of the film. That was also another Joe Quesada cover.
Right, yeah. Mark Steven Johnson definitely made a movie here for the fans. And while you can't hold that against him, fan service alone does not make a good movie. You need the rest of those quality elements, like a solid screenplay, strong performances. People want to get lost in a story. And just winking to fans, while cool, is not a story.
It almost takes you out of the movie.
Yeah. Strong fan service in a film, I equate to getting a gift that's exactly what you wanted. It's nice. But you know what's better than getting a gift you always wanted? Getting a gift you never knew you always wanted. And that's what makes things like the Dark Knight film and the Daredevil Netflix series so good. They played to the fans, but they also surprised fans with their original stories and with their quality.
Oh yeah, totally. There were no surprises here in this film at all. And that's kind of a fine line to straddle, and it's something that I think that's really difficult for studios to do.
Exactly. One of the good things I thought about this movie was actually its level of violence. It really pushed the PG-13 rating. Even by today's standards, I think this is a borderline R-rated film, because you have like shuriken going into jugulars, people getting punched unconscious, sais going through hands, throats getting slit. The violence made the film feel very mature and adult compared to the more family-friendly Spider-Man and X-Men films at the time. As a teenager, I remember watching this film in theaters being like, yeah, a movie that speaks to me as a mature human being. This isn't one of those baby films. Superheroes aren't for kids. I actually wrote a paper in college about how superheroes weren't for kids, which is so naive at the time. Because really, comic books are for everyone.
Right.
At the time, I just really wanted to get past the stigma that I felt people had about me, that I was into comics and therefore, immature.
Childish.
Exactly. But there are comics out there for every level of reader. Daredevil, though, due to its nature, I think is definitely one of those more mature titles. And I like how this movie straddled that line in terms of its rating.
Yeah, I think at the time, studios were probably apprehensive about releasing a rated R superhero film.
Yeah.
You could do that now with movies like Deadpool. Deadpool proved the concept. But at the time, you definitely couldn't do it with Daredevil, and you definitely couldn't do it with a star like Ben Affleck.
Right. Outside of the symbolism and violence, there were things I didn't love about this movie visually. The cinematography was freaking bizarre in some spots. Like, the film was trying to be experimental in how it presented certain shots. I could appreciate a good Dutch angle now and then to get like an uneasy feeling of things, but there were some shots here, like action shots, that were straight up sideways. Some were like upside down through a reflection in a puddle. It was just like way too much. Like, it was trying to be avant-garde, but it came across as more like incomprehensible most times.
Yeah. It made it look like they didn't know what they were doing.
Absolutely. Mark Steven Johnson really didn't know what he was doing. This was the first movie he's ever made like this. And so he was probably like, oh, I'm going to like make people feel like they're blind by not being able to understand what they're seeing. If the Netflix show taught us anything, is that when it comes to action, it's way better to just be clear and simple with the camera work, let the fights unfold in front of the viewer. I'll take the Netflix Daredevil hallway fight any day over this film's Josie's bar fight where the camera was just spinning every which way.
Oh, yeah, totally. Good fight choreography goes a long way. I think it's hard to shoot. I think it's hard to do. I think good action in general is hard to do, which is sort of why you had Christopher Nolan kind of cheating with it in Batman Begins.
Yeah, that action was also unintelligible. It was bad.
Good action should have a certain flow to it. And when you do too many cuts and too many shots, like this movie, like Daredevil, it loses that flow.
Yeah, totally agree. Another sore spot for this film that I really noticed this last time I watched it was its dialogue. It was so overwritten and obvious and cliche. Some lines like almost bordered on puns, but everything was delivered seriously. Lines like, "Justice is blind, but it can be heard." And like, "Life flashes before your eyes, even for a blind man." I think that kind of dialogue works really well in a comic, but is just too ridiculous in a film. I actually think this script would have made a great graphic novel, and I think it's an example of how comics can get away with more melodramatic writing than films can.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, saying it out loud does make it a little bit more ridiculous.
Yeah. I hope justice is found before justice finds you. And speaking of unnatural dialogue, like, I did not like this film's over-reliance on narration. That's another thing that comics can get away with, that internal monologue. You know, in modern films, narration is just lazy, and it's so much better to let the audience build their own sort of internal dialogue through what's shown on screen.
Yeah, in screenwriting, narration is frowned upon. It's sort of seen as a shortcut when you could tell the same thing cinematically.
Right, show, don't tell.
Exactly. Although I think it semi-worked in this film, for the first half at least, because he was telling you the story of his life.
Right, yeah, they did do a narrative device where it was kind of like a flashback. So the narration may have been appropriate there, but it was still delivered horribly by Ben Affleck. He was doing like this weird, like, breathy voice, like, "I'll never forget what I saw because it was the last thing I'd ever see." You know, it was like, oh God, dude, just stop talking like this. Speak normally.
He was practicing for Batman.
Yeah, maybe. I thought his Batman voice was actually much better. It was, you know, digitally altered, but
yeah.
I love that for the character.
Speaking of that, there were so many parallels here to Batman in this movie, I feel like.
Yeah.
From him, like, holding his father in the alley, in the street.
I never loved that. You know, Daredevil was not a kid when his father died. He was like a late teenager. He had already gone through all of his stick training and everything like that.
My 10-year-old daughter said that, and she was like, "What is this, Batman?" I was like, exactly. Now you know. Now you know.
Well, this film and the Netflix show both made that mistake of killing the father too soon.
And also the moment where he was, like, casting the shadow to, like, instill fear. I felt like that was Batman, too.
That was fine. Daredevil does that all the time, too.
Does he?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's fine. Now, we chose to talk about the theatrical cut for this review over the director's cut because the theatrical cut is what most people have seen. If you weren't aware, there is a director's cut of this movie that is marginally better.
Yeah, it has Coolio in it.
I mean, it does, but that part's almost a wash because the side plot with Coolio does add more legal drama to the film, but Coolio is so bad at acting that almost negates it. But you also get more investigative type stuff in the director's cut. You get longer action scenes and a better structured story overall. The director's cut is rated R because it has more violence, some language, and a decent case of side boob.
Oh, from who?
Some random actress in Josie's bar.
Dang it.
The theatrical cut did include more romance scenes, like the love scene that was in this movie.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. But this theatrical cut doesn't explain well enough the whole Daredevil Kingpin relationship. One of my biggest problems with the story of this movie is that, you know, Daredevil's trying to find the Kingpin because he's trying to stop crime, but he acts like there's a personal connection against the villain. And once they meet, those personal connections are all set up when it's revealed that Kingpin killed his father and everything like that, as if this were a story of vengeance. But none of that relationship is very well defined.
Well, the thing is that we knew that Wilson Fisk killed Daredevil's father before Daredevil did.
Yeah, it's dramatic irony. The audience knows something the protagonist doesn't.
But it's not good dramatic irony.
Right, yeah, exactly. Kingpin doesn't mention Daredevil until he's talking to Bullseye about him, and that's like well over an hour into the film. But prior to that, we're not even sure if Fisk is aware of the vigilante. Yeah, he's putting a stop to a lot of the crime that he's implementing within the city. It would have been good to get a scene where Kingpin is like reading about Daredevil and addressing the fact that Daredevil's causing all these problems for him. You know, as comic book fans, we know that these characters are mortal enemies, but like to casual moviegoers, I feel like that relationship is entirely ill-defined. But speaking about the characters, let's talk more about them in our character breakdown. Now, Matt Murdock, aka Daredevil, was played by Ben Affleck. I know a lot of people had problems when Ben Affleck was first cast in this role, but I personally never had trouble seeing him as an action star.
I don't understand the hate for Ben Affleck. People hated him even when this movie came out.
He was definitely oversaturated at the time, and he had that whole like G. Lee, Jennifer Lopez tabloid drama that was going on around the time. But to me, he always looked like your typical action star.
Yeah, and he pulled off a pretty good-looking Matt Murdock in this film. He definitely looked the part.
Yeah, I actually was excited about Ben Affleck's casting at the time because I had read his forward introduction that he had done for Kevin Smith's Guardian Devil trade paperback collection.
Right. He's definitely a fan of the character, and I think that's why he took the role.
Yeah, and I was a bigger fan of his Matt Murdock acting in this movie than I was of his Daredevil. I think his Daredevil was a little bit hammy, but his Matt Murdock was pretty charming.
That said, I thought his costume was awesome.
His costume is fucking amazing in this movie.
I know a lot of people didn't like the whole leather angle, but to me that totally worked.
It looks so good on film, the way it shines in lighting, and the color is just gorgeous. The entire design of his costume, including his billy club, I thought was really well done here. And it was designed by James Atchison, who also did the Sam Raimi Spider-Man costume. He's a fantastic designer, and I think he's the one that really modernized superhero costumes for the current era.
Oh yeah, totally.
I actually think that this costume is better than the Netflix Daredevil costume.
Oh yeah, I agree, and it's definitely more comics accurate.
There's just something so damn like aesthetic and streamlined about Ben Affleck's suit that I really like.
I love the lenses. I love that the studio wanted to include the lenses. I'm still waiting for Batman to have a set of lenses built into his cowl.
Yeah, I guess it made it hard for acting, but, you know, the character's blind, so maybe it added to Ben Affleck's performance.
Yeah, there you go.
The Billy Club design was really well done. The way it had like the angel and demon at the tip of the cane, and how when he twisted it, it would break into the nunchucks with like the long cable between them.
Yeah.
Really well done here. I was really pleased with that because Daredevil's Billy Club has always been one of the most fascinating things about the character, I think. Just how it works and how he's able to use it.
Really good Billy Club usage with like grappling and swinging and the line going everywhere, Joe Quesada style.
Yes. Yeah. I love that shit. It's so cool looking. Now, Ben Affleck's arc in this movie was to save the city, but he ended up saving his soul or something like that. It's a little bit vague and not quite convincing. He talked about how Elektra was the one to save his soul, and I'm wondering how the hell that happened. Basically, he was struggling with the idea that he was the bad guy, and so by the end, he decided not to kill Wilson Fisk the way he fucking straight up murdered Jose Quesada at the beginning of the film.
Yeah, right?
I'm not sure how Elektra influenced that because she was every bit as lethal as he was, if not more so. So it was just all platitudes. He was saying things that really had no basis within the story.
I guess she made him want to be a better person, maybe? But I'm not sure how. You're right, she didn't stop him from killing.
He did it on his own, and then like attributed that to her in his end dialogue.
When you can't even get the main character's arc right, how is there any hope for the rest of the film?
Let's move on to Elektra Natchios, who was played by Jennifer Garner. Now, Jennifer Garner, I think, was fine in the role. She definitely looks Greek. I think she certainly evokes strength. What she doesn't really evoke, though, was the seductive side of the character.
What?
To me, I think of Elektra as like the sultry assassin, you know, and I think Elodie Young in the Netflix show really played that role well.
That's true.
Because Elodie was this like femme fatale. I do have to say, though, Jennifer Garner freaking crushes it with those sighs.
Oh, hell yeah.
She's such a talented physical actress.
Her sighs were cool. I wish her costume was a little bit more true to the comics, though.
Yeah, she was like wearing pants. I really just wish the costume was red. I wasn't a fan of the black look. I know this is like her origin story and everything like that, and it would be hard to justify a red costume over like a stealthy black one. But it's not like the costume she was wearing was like a practical outfit.
No, right?
You know? So if you're going to put her in a bustier and leather pants, you may as well add that extra touch of making it red.
At the very least.
It's not believable to begin with. But overall, I do think that her character was pretty true to the comics. I think she had a good arc. It was a simple arc. There wasn't much to it, but they pulled it off. Fall in love with Matt, father gets killed, get vengeance, and then she gets killed.
And then goes on to make a shitty movie.
Yeah, that's the next step. Let's move on to Wilson Fisk, a.k.a. Kingpin, who is played by Michael Clark Duncan. I really liked Michael Clark Duncan in this role. He was so physically imposing, way more physically imposing than Vincent D'Onofrio from the Netflix series. I just wish Michael Clark Duncan had been given better material to work with here, because I think he would have nailed it.
I agree. I think all the problems with Kingpin in this film is all on the page.
He was so generic.
Super. And I really miss Michael Clark Duncan. He was a phenomenal actor. You know, he got a chance to prove that in The Green Mile. And there really wasn't enough of him in this movie.
Absolutely. He needed to be established more as a physical threat early on, which they kind of do in the director's cut, but even that wasn't enough. They also needed to establish his motivations more.
What motivations? He didn't have any motivations in this movie.
Exactly. He was just generic mob boss who at some point developed a vendetta against Daredevil. I love the backstory that we got of the character in the Netflix series.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's what we needed here.
That show is so good.
But again, I do prefer Michael Clark Duncan's imposing nature in this movie over Vincent D'Onofrio's.
I think both of them were pretty scary.
Let's talk about Bullseye, who is played by Colin Farrell. Colin Farrell is a great actor. I like him in a lot of the stuff that I've seen. This is probably my least favorite role that he's ever done. It seems like he had a lot of fun with the role, but he was just so over the top that I couldn't find myself enjoying it. As a matter of fact, like sometimes I'd get even annoyed with some of the quirky mannerism things that he was doing in this movie.
Yeah, and it's weird because I think there was some eye twitching and stuff like that he had, but Heath Ledger also did that with the Joker. He just somehow did it better.
He did it more convincingly. Heath Ledger added subtlety to it. There was nothing subtle about Colin Farrell's performance in this movie.
Oh yeah, definitely not.
And it was like he was trying to be a villain from like the old Adam West Batman television show with how zany and crazy those guys were.
Yeah.
That's what he was doing here.
Yeah, just a two-dimensional character, like no motivations other than, oh, he made me miss. I never miss.
Yeah, we got the motivations and backstory of the character in the Netflix series. That was really well done.
Oh, yeah.
And Bullseye was scary in the Netflix show. In this film, he was a cartoon character.
Yeah, and because of that, he felt really out of place when they were trying to go for like gritty realism.
What did you think of Bullseye's costume?
It kind of looked like they didn't really try with it. They just went a completely different direction. And it's not a bad direction. It's just different.
The scarification thing was unique. It definitely sold him just in appearance as this madman. I didn't mind that, but I wasn't entirely sold on the jacket, I guess. I think there was a better adaptation they could have done that was both truer to the comics and more functional. Let's move on to Foggy Nelson, who is played by Jon Favreau, who we know as Happy Hogan from the Iron Man films and as the director of the first two Iron Man movies. I thought he was great comedic relief in this movie.
And that's all he was really in this film. I would have loved to have seen him tie into the plot a little bit more.
Yeah.
Maybe help from a legal perspective in some way.
Well, you would love the director's cut then.
Oh, really?
That's what he does, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to watch that.
Yeah, I would say the director's cut is as different from the theatrical cut as the Ultimate Edition of BVS is from that theatrical cut.
Really?
Yes. If you guys haven't seen it yet, I would recommend that version. But that's all the main actors for this movie. Let's go ahead and get into the story highlights. Now, the opening credits for this film I thought were really well done and clever, like how the names were written out in Braille, pulled out from the skyscraper city lights.
That was cool. That was genius, I thought.
When I first saw that in movie theaters, I was like, oh, this is going to be a perfect Daredevil movie. Little did I know. I really wish that movies would go back to like the real stylized opening credits.
Yeah, for like Spider-Man, like Daredevil.
Yeah.
They were really cool.
Yeah, nowadays, the MCU just gets straight into the movie before even showing the studio cards.
Yeah, now they wait to show like the logo of the film and like the flashy credits until after the movie, right before the final credits.
Yeah. But the opening credits are just such a good opportunity to get a feel for the vibe of what you're about to see, you know? The movie starts off with Ben Affleck in the church, injured from his fight with Elektra and Bullseye. It goes into flashback where we learn his origin, when he gets toxic chemicals splashed into his eyes as a kid and gets radar senses. Now, the radar senses in this movie were depicted through computer-generated constructs, which was interesting, but that's never really how I imagined it from the books. I really like how the Netflix series depicted the radar senses as this world on fire type thing, where you're not just seeing the visual aspect of things. The Netflix show also kind of visualized smells and temperatures and things like that.
That said, I really did like the hospital scene where he experiences his powers for the first time.
Yeah.
I thought that was really well done, especially in the theaters with the surround sound and everything like that. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Really great experience in the theater.
And in that hospital scene, how like the church bells kind of cleared away all the noise.
That was beautiful.
Yeah. You know, it's those small touches that Mark Steven Johnson injected into this movie that kind of save it. As Matt Murdock recoups from his accident, his father recoups as a boxer and gets told to throw a match for the mob boss Fallon. He refuses in order to be an example for his son and ends up getting killed for that.
It's a great origin. Heartbreaking.
Yeah, I've always really liked Daredevil's origin.
I really liked the actor that they got to play his father.
Yes.
I thought that he really sold the lines of like, you hit nothing but the books and stuff like that.
Yeah, he had a real tough New Yorker vibe going. From there, the movie goes into the present day where we see Matt as a lawyer. He's not able to convict Jose Quesada. And after the trial, we get his first reference to the Kingpin, where he's like, Kingpin's got to be footing the bill. And I feel like to general audiences, I'm not sure if they understand what that line means. As comic fans, we know that Kingpin is the head of New York City crime, but we never get quite enough explanation as to what Daredevil's like motivations are or feelings are about the Kingpin. He's just after him.
You think he would have interrogated Jose Quesada as to who the Kingpin was and his whereabouts?
Some kind of mention would have helped, I think. From there, we see Daredevil suit up and go onto the rooftops and attack Jose Quesada and his goons at Josie's bar. Now, the scene where he's running across rooftops, I thought was cool, but I didn't like how he was able to just leap across the streets. Like, he doesn't have super leaping ability, which was like a power that they seem to give him in this movie.
Yeah, he did say that his sense of touch gave him like superhuman strength during his like narration, but I was like, since when?
In the comics, his senses don't give him super strength, but he can negate pain in his ability to focus his senses.
Still, that's not going to help you jump off of a 4-story building, land on the street,
Right?
Not break your damn legs.
Yeah. There were some elements of the Josie's bar fight scene that I really liked that I felt were clever. Like when he like surfs one bad guy down a staircase railing and how he like rides some ceiling fan blades up to stand on top of it. There was some creative stuff here that you can only really do with the character of Daredevil, and I thought that was handled well. We got to hear Nickelback during this fight scene.
Ugh.
The movie soundtrack was good for its time. I appreciated it when it came out because it was a lot of the same music that I listened to, which was new metal and rock and stuff like that. But nowadays, it just dates the film so much.
Super dated, yeah.
Yeah. Movies have to stop doing that. It's cool in the time. It's not cool for any other time. Daredevil chases Quesada into the subway station and freaking knocks the guy into the tracks where he's cut in half, which is so antithetical to the character of Daredevil. This was the biggest thing I hated about this movie, because he would never do it. And yeah, the movie was trying to be about how he's not killing anymore, you know? He like learned the error of his ways, but he never would have started to begin with. Daredevil has always been the one hero that never kills because of his religion.
Right. He's a devout Catholic.
Exactly. They totally dropped the ball on that story point there. And I hated the flaming logo at the end of this scene. Like, it made no sense. Like, was he carrying around a vial of, like, flammable liquid that he would just pour? You know, I don't know.
It was
dumb.
really dumb.
It was dumb. From there, we go to Daredevil's lair. I did think it was really cool how he got into the lair with the 3 spinning padlocks.
I also liked that he slept in a sensory deprivation tank.
That was clever, because that was never in the comics. The next day, we see Matt and Foggy in the coffee shop, where Elektra walks in, and he hits on her, follows her out to a playground, and they fight each other.
Worst fight scene in comic book movie history,
It's
I think.
so cringe. You know, like, it's all done tongue-in-cheek, and it's supposed to be playful, and these are 2 superhero characters, like, flirting with each other. I guess that's how it could be rationalized, but it doesn't work in any way. And, like, watching it this time, it was so awkward, because, like, he has this really aggressive approach toward Elektra. Like, she clearly wants nothing to do with him, and he's, like, grabbing her, you know?
Yeah,
And she
yeah.
takes offense to that. Totally understandable why she would fight him to get him off of her. But then he fucking tries to flip her. Like, what kind of asshole does that? Like, she's fighting you to get you away from her, and you fucking flip her? What the hell's wrong with you? I guess you could have passed this, like, aggressive courtship behavior on Matt Murdock's senses. Like, maybe he sensed her pheromone levels rising and that she was, like, into him and stuff like that. But that's, like, the only way I'll accept that.
And to top it all off, the fight choreography was horrendous.
Yeah.
It was so slow. You could totally tell that Ben Affleck was not even in the same league as Jennifer Garner when it came to doing a physical fight scene.
Yeah, absolutely. From there, we get introduced to the Kingpin, who has this cool office where there's a water feature pouring all throughout the walls and floor and stuff like that.
Super convenient.
Super convenient, right? And he has a meeting with Nicholas Nachos, who's trying to get out of the game, and Kingpin calls in the assassin Bullseye, who we meet in a bar in a pretty good scene that was played for laughs. I did think the plane scene was pretty funny, too. We see Daredevil on patrol, where he beats the shit out of this guy, scares this kid, and tries to convince himself he's not the bad guy, even though, you know, he fucking murdered a dude in cold blood at the subway station.
Yeah, this happens like almost an hour into the film, and it's like barely setting up his arc right there.
Yeah.
It's kind of late in the film to do that.
From there, he gets an invitation to this ball, and he meets up with Elektra, and they go on to the rooftops where he shows her his favorite view of the city. There was a weird beat on this particular scene where she tries to leave, and so he was like, no, stay, it's about to rain. And then it rains, and then he hears trouble, so he's about to go, and then she's like, no, stay. So they're like both trying to leave and pull each other to stay with him. It was a weird dynamic within this scene.
Well, he told her that she was pretty, so now she wanted to stay with him.
That's what it felt like, you know? It felt a little shallow. But he does end up staying with her, you know? And you gotta love a hero who prioritizes his wiener over protecting innocence. They have a tender love scene where they like feel each other's scars and everything like that. And he gets another invite to the Grand Hotel Ball, which he and Foggy go to. At the ball, Matt Murdock gives Wilson Fisk shit, calling him not innocent. And it makes me wonder, like, does he suspect Wilson Fisk of being the Kingpin?
Right.
Like, why is he giving Wilson Fisk shit? Does he know that he's, like, a mob boss? What does he know about him? And if he suspects Wilson Fisk, why isn't he staking out his office where he's clear to learn that Wilson Fisk is the Kingpin? It all ties into the issue that I have about the relationship between Daredevil and the Kingpin being unclear.
I did think it was pretty bold that Fisk straight up told Nicholas Nachos that he was going to fucking kill him, like, right then and there.
Yeah. Like, if I were Nicholas Nachos, I wouldn't have left the damn party. I would have, like, stayed in public, you know?
Yeah, I would have freaking called the police. I mean,
Yeah.
like, dude, this guy's the Kingpin.
Yeah.
I will rat. I don't care. At least I'll live.
Exactly. So Nicholas Nachos leaves the party along with Elektra. Bullseye hunts them down, crashes their car. Bullseye and Daredevil fight, and what I thought was pretty cool.
I did think it was cool that they had Daredevil miss his billy club because of a nearby explosion that threw his senses off. That was cool.
Yeah. Elektra gains consciousness, seeing Daredevil's billy club in her father's chest. She blames him and seeks out revenge, which she makes clear at her father's funeral scene. After the funeral, Ben Urich goes to the morgue where we see Kevin Smith, who's playing a character named Kirby in reference to Jack Kirby. He reveals to Ben Urich that Matt Murdock is Daredevil because his billy club turns into a blind walking cane.
I thought Kevin Smith did a great job in this role.
Yeah. From there, Kingpin compliments Bullseye on his skill and asks him to kill Elektra as well. And Bullseye asks for a costume
That he never gets.
We get an awesome Evanescence music video after that, where we see Elektra training with her size, and they even tie in shots of Daredevil getting suited up during the male vocals of the song. And it's like so fucking spot on, because like they go to Daredevil and the lyrics are like, all this time I couldn't see, left in the dark, that you would never follow me, you know. It was, oh my God.
It's unacceptable.
The song worked well with the visuals and everything, but it was kind of cheesy.
People accuse Zack Snyder of doing music videos. Fucking look at this.
Yeah, that was totally a music video. I loved that song. From there, we go to the rooftops where Daredevil is looking for Elektra, and Elektra is trying to kill Daredevil. She stabs Daredevil and realizes it's Matt when she pulls off his mask. Then Bullseye enters the scene, and then we have that classic moment from the comic books where Bullseye murders Elektra by impaling her with her own sai.
Now, I imagine audiences at this point were like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I heard some audible gasps when I watched it in the theater because, you know, the hero's always supposed to save the girl in these stories, and that didn't happen here. So it came across as extremely shocking and violent, I think, to most audiences. And kudos to the filmmakers for sticking with that story from the comics.
Yeah, it's pretty ballsy.
From there, we're reintroduced to the opening scene of the film in the church, where Daredevil and Bullseye have a big fight on a huge-ass organ, like the largest organ in the entire world.
Yeah, seriously, that thing had to be like 6-7 stories.
Yeah. It did provide a neat backdrop for the battle, teaching Bullseye Daredevil's weakness to loud sounds. So Bullseye takes advantage of that by ringing the church bell and beating the shit out of Daredevil. But before he can finish him off, he gives up the Kingpin's identity as Wilson Fisk. And then what I think is probably the best display of Daredevil's powers in this movie, Daredevil hears a sniper from across the street about to shoot them, and he moves Bullseye's hands in the bullet's trajectory.
Giving him a stigmata.
Yeah, which, you know, was more, you know, religious imagery. Then Daredevil throws Bullseye out the window. Now knowing that Wilson Fisk is the Kingpin, Daredevil goes over to Fisk's office to fight him. Fisk was ready for him. I'm not sure why he was ready for him unless he knew that Bullseye had snitched him out. But for some reason, he knew Daredevil was coming. The fight that we got between Daredevil and Kingpin was really short. It went on longer in the director's cut. I'm kind of pissed about that because it was actually a pretty good fight scene. And here, Daredevil basically shoots his billy club, it fails, and he gets beat the fuck up before he breaks the water system. Now, I don't know why they gave Wilson Fisk the whole water feature within his office when they easily could have gone with something like a cigar lighter to an overhead sprinkler system or something like that to get that same effect.
That's true.
But Daredevil uses the water to his advantage to beat the crap out of Kingpin and then decides not to kill him because he's not the bad guy. And how he came to that revelation is not quite clear.
Yeah, the way he took out the Kingpin's knees. Oh, I felt that.
Yeah.
Every time I see that, I feel it.
That crunch was hard to listen to. And then knowing Michael Clark Duncan's weight and how he fell onto his knees, that sounded horrible.
Yeah. Michael Clark Duncan did a great job of selling the pain there.
Yeah. Matt Murdock gets closure about his dad and perhaps about Elektra's death because he finds this braille necklace that she left for him.
that she could have left before she died.
Yeah, that's true. And he talks about how Elektra saved his soul. Again, they never talked about vigilante ethics or anything like that, so I'm not sure how she did that. And then we see that Ben Urich decides not to disclose Daredevil's secret identity to the public. And that's the end of the movie. There is a brief mid-credits sequence where we learn that Bullseye is still alive.
Oh, I totally forgot about that. I ended the movie before that scene.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But, if you didn't watch that scene, then you probably assumed that Daredevil killed Bullseye just prior to not killing the Kingpin. So you got to make sure to watch that mid-credits scene for Daredevil's arc to actually make sense. Overall, the movie has a lot of problems, from the direction to the writing to the performances. Really, the good things that it has going for it are its action and its fan service. But that doesn't carry the film far enough to warrant a good rating, so I give it 2.5 stars.
Yeah, that seems fair. I mean, even when it comes to the action, you have like the playground scene, you have a lot of CG. Not all of it was great. When it came to the fan service, it was great for fans, but, the general public, they don't even recognize that half the time. So yeah, again, I think 2.5 stars makes sense. It's the same rating we gave Green Lantern, and I sort of feel about this film the same way I do about that one.
Yeah, I will say, though, that the director's cut is a better movie. Watch that film if you're going to watch this, and I would give that version 3 stars.
You do recommend that one?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm going to have to check it out. But that does it for this review. Let us know what you thought about the movie by writing to us at dynamicduelpodcast@gmail.com or by visiting us on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. You can find links to all of our accounts by visiting our website, dynamicduel.com.
And on our site, you could also find a link to our Patreon page where we offer bonus content, Discord access, and other perks. Our lowest tier is only $2 a month. Visit patreon.com/dynamicduel right after this episode.
Also on our website is a link to our merch store, where we sell t-shirts, hoodies, stickers, and more with our Dynamic Duel No Prize artwork. This week, I'm going to be drawing Bullseye. Not the version from this movie, but the comics version.
Yeah, good. That'll be cool. We want to remind everyone again to please subscribe to our show if you haven't, or please leave a rating or review on your platform of choice. And sharing the show on social media or in person is also a big help for us. But that does it for this episode. In our next episode, we will be reviewing the DC animated film Justice Society World War II.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's been out. It's been getting some good reviews. Can't wait to see it.
We want to give a big thanks to our executive producers Ken Johnson, Jace Crump, John Starosky, John Speas, Zachary Hepburn, and John Bechinina for helping make this podcast possible. And we'll talk to you guys next week.
Up and away.
True believers.